as you guys probably already know because you're subscribed to this channel, and this channel is pretty well focused on keeping our eyes on the commies, so we know what the hell's going on. Anyways, tomorrow, January 1st, 2026, Illinois brings into safe storage laws. Now, this video isn't really about that, but it inspired the video I am going to make today, and that's talking about common sense gun control. Where it came from, what's the deal with that, because that honestly is probably one of the commies' most powerful tools. But before we get on to that, I want to remind you guys that if you'd like to help support the channel, one of the best ways to do this is to shop it. Only Tactical Fans at Shopify.com, where you can purchase cool t-shirts like this one right here. Obviously, I took away the free CRS because, well, I'm free, and I put shall not be infringed in here. But this was actually made by somebody sitting in county. It was the tattoo guy there, and I paid him in ramen noodles. And yeah, the whole point, I was like, hey, I want like a Terminator-style skull because, I don't know, but with my backwards hat, and I wanted to like, he's bit off more than he could chew, like he's choking on the NFA. And I feel like there's a whole bunch of symbolism in this shirt, and they look really good. And you can get them in other colors than white. Yeah, this one's a little bit big on me because I wasn't sure on the sizing of the company when I had it ordered, which I was still incarcerated at that point in time. However, you can get yours today at Only Tactical Fans at Shopify.com. So let's take a dive into the phrase and see what's all going on here. Like, what's going on? So back in the day, it was just called gun control. No fluff, nothing like that. However, they wound up doing some polls in the early 2000s, and they found out that gun control had a really hard take with their audience. So like, it would scare away the moderates and people that weren't like full-on commies. And like, well, hey, we can't do that because we need voters. So instead of telling them the truth, why don't we just simply change the name a little bit to make it sound a little bit more appetizing and easier to swallow for the people that aren't full-on communists? And that's when they came out with the whole common sense thing. So it started getting pushed hard back in Sandy Hook. Obama started using it practically all the time, talking about common sense gun safety, common sense gun control, common sense, let's take away your rights this and let's take away your rights that, repeating it over and over and over, trying to drive it home that magazine bans, taking away different types of ammunition, making ammunition an explosive, making it so it's illegal to build your own firearms. All that stuff seemed completely normal, common sense.
That's what these reforms are designed to do. They're common sense measures. They have the support of the majority of the American people.
And then it also had another shift in 2014. Bloomberg's gun control groups, so he had a couple of different ones. He had Mayors Against Gun Violence and, what was the other one called? Doesn't even matter. The point is, now it's called Everytown for Gun Safety. And you notice how it's not like every town or every commie against gun rights or trying to take gun rights or anything like that. No, gun safety, making it sound appealable because they have to get it to their moderates because there's only a small percentage of radical communists. The rest of them somehow got sold on the idea, likely from like a college professor or something like that, and they're not really full on like, hey, let's strip away Americans' rights and put everybody in a breadline and force them to work manual labor jobs that we don't want to work because for this caste system to work, only a couple of us can be on top and everybody else needs to be on the bottom. For every 1 million, I think there needs to be like 1,000 people that are in poverty. I forget how the ratio works, but there's actual ratio because if everybody was a millionaire, it wouldn't matter. If everybody could buy Bugattis and mansions, well, then the mansions and Bugattis would become so valuable, nobody could get them. So there needs to be a large amount of people in poverty for a couple of people to succeed. And communism pushes it to a whole other level because they force people into being in poverty. We're like in America, you get a choice. You get to decide what you want to be. Through hard work, innovation, and just really grinding, you too can be rich. In communist countries, it don't work that way. If you're born as a street sweeper, you're a street sweeper. That's just the way it is. There's no changing that. There's like 1%, and they need 99% to be in poverty for this 1% to be ultra super rich, powerful. Anyway, so it was chasing away their moderates. So what they dropped was the whole gun control and started using words like safety and common sense. Let's be real. The only real common sense gun control in America is shall not be infringed. It's pretty common what that means. Even if you don't understand the history behind it and like understand the meaning of the words, which you pretty much do, it still translates to today. Everything shall not be is completely, like, everybody today knows what that means. Infringe, well, they might have to look at it a little bit, but the word itself is pretty explanatory. So, shall not be infringed, because we're a constitutional republic, is the only common sense gun control, because it says right there. And remember, the Constitution wasn't for us. It was limiting the government. So, shall not be infringed is ordering the government to do what? It seems pretty common sense to me. Anyway, why common sense works. So this all started with Thomas Paine in 1776. So when he was pushing for America's independence, he put out a phrase, this little flyer thing, basically saying it was common sense. Now what that does is it makes it, if you disagree, it automatically makes you the unreasonable one and you're the extremist. So if it's common sense, like, yeah, common sense, we should become a free nation, and you disagree, you're the extremist. Same thing with the whole gun control thing. So common sense that this little gun control will save lives. If you disagree, you're the unreasonable one and you're the extremist.
And behind the scenes, they'll do everything they can to block any common sense reform and make sure nothing changes whatsoever.
So let's wind this train on back, get off the history, and talk about the Illinois law just a little bit. We're not going to go too heavy in it because that's really not what this video is about. This video is about common sense and the phrasing behind it. But anyways, let's cover it anyway. So the Illinois safe storage law was marketed as common sense safe storage. So if you don't agree with this, you're the unreasonable one.
Who shouldn't have guns away from guns, making it harder for them to reach those. Right now, the law requires you to keep your gun locked away and inaccessible to those 14 and under. But in the new year, that goes up to anyone 18 and under. You're also legally required to keep guns out of reach to at-risk people, someone who has said or has shown that they could be a danger to themselves or others. It also prohibits guns being accessible to prohibited persons. Now, this is anyone not allowed by state or federal law, convicted felons, for example, or even someone with a restraining order against them cannot be able to access a gun in your home.
A quick summary, what it actually does is it requires you to lock up your firearms if, now this is where they sell the whole common sense thing, if there's children, prohibited people, dangerous people, they give a list of people, right? So, that wouldn't be a problem. Like, okay, I know that there's not going to be children here, so I don't have to lock up my firearm. I know I don't live with a felon, so I have to lock up my firearm. However, reasonably should know. Yes, before, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. So the law says if I know that there's children or prohibited people or something like that in my house, I need to lock up my firearms. So reasonably should know opens the door to everything else. So now I reasonably should have known, because of my neighbor's Facebook post and the fact he's been gone for a while, that he's a convicted felon, was in prison. So, when he broke into my house and stole my firearm and committed an armed robbery and killed somebody, I reasonably should have known he was a felon, and I reasonably should have known that I should have locked up my firearms. Reasonably should have known is this massive loophole prosecutors can drive a Mack truck through. Reasonably should have known is extremely dangerous. And let me explain to you why. I mean, yeah, I gave this particular story right here, but all right, for a conspiracy, one of the key elements is willful violation of the law. However, there's a clause on there, reasonably should have known. We presented overwhelming evidence to the courts saying, hey, CRS knew for a fact that the auto key card was not illegal. You can see it in my videos. I even say in my videos that I believe the auto key card is not illegal. So that removes the major element of conspiracy, because you have to willfully violate the law. So my plan was to play the actual clip of what I said that clearly establishes intent behind the whole auto key card thing. Unfortunately, as soon as my name showed up on the indictment with the auto key card, YouTube nuked basically every video where I said the word auto key card. Now, I do have a hard drive later, which we will pull this out. But anyway, the clip was actually played in trial. So it's not like the government somehow didn't know. So I'm going to just do a reenactment. So you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit and pretend I'm at the gun shop right now. And we're going to pretend it's like the third auto key card video, right? This is long before any indictments had happened. So, I had asked about this piece right here. It's similar to the auto key card, but it's cut out. It's just tabbed in. And the ATF told me, yes, this was problematic because the intent for the parts to be removed was clear. Now, they had sent him a cease and desist, so he no longer runs that product. I had asked if the auto key card would run a similar fate, and they said no, because it's not tabbed in and it's just a drawing on a piece of steel. The intent to take out the parts is missing, where the intent to remove the parts in this particular product is there. Now again, that was a reenactment. It's not verbatim. I'm going off of memory. The last time I seen the video was 3 years ago at trial. So, once I got the hard drive though, then we'll actually roll in the actual video clip. However, they have a reasonably should have known clause on there. So even though I truly believe the auto key card was totally legal, which makes me not eligible for a conspiracy charge, the prosecution said, well, he reasonably should have known. He reasonably should have known that a drawing on a piece of steel is regulated by the NFA. Even though there's no precedence for it, there's no prior case laws, so they can take reasonably should have known and shove innocent Americans into prison. Like I said with the whole neighbor thing. Oh, I reasonably should have known that my parents were coming over tonight and they were bringing their grandkids. So I should have had my firearms locked up, and I didn't. Yes, I wasn't home, and the grandkid got injured, and I wasn't there to prevent it, but I reasonably should have known that my parents were likely to come over and bring in the grandkid because they come over quite frequently, and they bring the grandkid quite frequently, so therefore I should have just automatically had all my firearms locked up. That's what reasonably should have known does. So this law is extremely predatory. It's ridiculous. It basically chills and forces the average American in Illinois to start locking up their firearms, just in case. Because now it's not common sense or anything like that. It's just in case is what you're trying to avoid. Unless you want to become a criminal, you better lock up your firearms just in case. That's what that law truly means. And that's a big picture of the playbook with the whole safe storage thing. And how did they sell this? Oh, it's common sense. That is simple. It's common sense safe storage. Nobody would argue with it unless you're a lawyer and you understand that reasonably should have known is how they're going to prosecute people that knew that there was no reason for them to store those firearms safety, that people that knew that there was no reason for them to lock up their firearms, but then this crazy, off-the-wall, XYZ circumstance happened that should have never been able to be predictable, but you know what? They reasonably should have known. Oh, the police came to their house for a CPS inspection, and yes, the room's locked, but there is kids in the house, so they reasonably should have known that there's still a possibility for the kids to get in the room. Well, now they got charges. Anyway, so that's the whole spin on common sense and gun control and why it's so dangerous, and we need to identify it. Because without understanding that something is so dangerous, you can't figure out ways to counteract it. Now, obviously, I'm going to use this example. I'm not saying I'm pro or against, but so you had pro-life and pro-choice. Ultimately, we need to come up with something similar because they have common sense. We need to get whatever it is that can combat common sense. Again, just like you have pro-life and pro-choice. The strongest two arguments for and against abortion, and that's why they go with those particular names. We need a name. We need a rebranding, something similar like that. Yes, shall not be infringed means a lot, and we all understand that. But it just doesn't sell very well with our moderates because shall not be infringed to a person who's not into gun rights and the Second Amendment, that kind of comes off as extremist. So anyways, just a little bit of food for thought. And if you'd also like to help support the channel, but you don't feel like buying merchandise, there's two different ways that you can do it that's really easy. One, we got the Cash App right here where you can do donations, which I don't blame you if you don't want to do that. That's kind of an extreme way to support the channel. But two, I have a way you can support the channel and it doesn't even cost you a penny. What you do is you go down in the description, all the way down at the bottom, and you click on the Amazon affiliate link. Even if you don't buy what that link is for, just clicking on it and do it the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway. I had a little kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.